Time to start digging into this Marshall. I was told the serial number would be a clue to the year. It ends in a B, which would make it 1970, but I think it's a little bit later. We'll find out as we go. I'll pull a date code off a cap or a pot, probably. I expect it to be 71 to 74. That was just a tack soldered mess. I'm going to be more careful doing stuff here where I'm going to be desoldering things as possible. I got some nice desoldering braid. The amp has no charge. Time to get in here and see what I can undo carefully. Can't quite see that, so I'm going to remove some of that solder so I can see what I'm doing here. If I can preserve this mustard, I'll be glad to. I'm less concerned with that non-original resistor, so careful snip through the resistor lead that doesn't touch the lead on the cap. I'm not sure how the audio of my voice will be sometimes as I lean down, so let me move the mic. Sometimes I've got to hunch over to see what I'm doing. So many solder joints that just aren't attached to anything, so they disconnected it from that tray. So I'll put that wire back later if possible. I'll be pulling this board up in a little bit, and then we'll see what treasures await beneath. I'm hoping that beneath all this, the traces and pads are okay. And that we won't have to undo anything crazy. All right, so that looked like it was tack soldered. It was not. Let's see about this cap here. Nope. It's original, just has blobs of solder on the end for some reason. May not be original, but this end of it was cut at some point. And so that blob of solder was holding it in place. Now these are going to get changed out because this one's got some moisture damage at this end and someone's touched it with a soldering iron at some point. Let's see here. And as always with this kind of thing, you see me just kind of quickly removing things. If you're trying to do this kind of stuff yourself and you've not done this 100 times, take pictures, make notes, make drawings, diagrams, whatever you need to do. Just don't write on the board and don't write on the chassis. You've seen that in some of the horror shows that have come in on the channel. You've seen that in some amps that weren't horror shows. It's still just disrespectful to write in someone's amp, especially when it's directions to yourself on which wires go where on a tube socket. All right, let's see here. These black caps here, whole lot of online nonsense about them these days. I'll return these with the amp to the owner. You can probably sell these to some Les Paul owner and make a pretty penny. Won't make any difference in a Les Paul, but an old film cap like this that may be unsafe to use in an amplifier due to leaking DC can still often function fine as a tone cap in an amp where there is no DC present. And people like black cats and black beauties and bumblebees. Because scarcity. I'm being gentle. When I pull the board, I'll remove the old leads here. Let's see, is this tack soldered here? Looks like it. Yeah, that's a tack soldered pyre. If that's the correct value, I'll put that back because it's a nice resistor. Let's see, can this be undone easily? I'm not really worried about the wire so much as not damaging the cat body there. Go around a few spots here. Get some excess solder off. Things used to be tack soldered. Sorry for the lack of play-by-play. I was leaning down to examine things. We snip off a little bit more of that wire that's just going to that ground. I've left enough for myself to be able to desolder it. Next, I'm going to remove all the pots. So step one is removing the knobs. Okay, they're all set screw. Just trying to be careful. The old plastic in these knobs gets fragile over the years. Don't want to crack anything. All right, no problem there. Someone gave me shit in the video the other day for using a crescent wrench. I have a lot of specific wrenches of various shapes, gaps, diameters, whatever you want to call it. And I will use them when necessary. But as long as I exercise proper caution, especially with regard to panel finishes and such, there's nothing wrong with using a crescent wrench because you can work faster. And I did not damage anything loosening these nuts, and then I'll remove them by hand. A fascinating video this must be to watch. People say they like the long form, so here's long form. All right, now before I pull the pots out so I can lift the board up, and I will find the correct socket for these little nuts here, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect some wires that I know I'm going to need to disconnect. These are the black paint, have never been touched. That goop on my hands is from touching the old nuts on the pots. So let me wipe that off before it transfers to my pants. I'll clean all these pots in the process. So I'm taking a look at this, and I want to do this with the least amount of possible damage, because sometimes you can really mess up these wires doing this next bit. Can you see what I'm doing here? That came off well, and no melting of the insulation. I'm working very hot at 700 degrees Fahrenheit. So what, about 350 Celsius? Not exactly, but if you want to know what temperature I'm using, and you're you know, either a drug dealer or a scientist, or live in 99% of the world and use a metric system, you can look that up for conversion. Where's my little hooky tool? It was here the other day. Here it is. And they shall not know where lieth the things that belong to their fathers, that they put there just the night before. So I start with the dental pick kind of pulling to the side, so I can kind of get a sense of where to push, so I can do this with minimal damage to the insulation of this wire, which I have achieved. Slight bit of insulation movement. In a perfect world, there'd be a little bit of exposed wire there where I could get a bit of, I use some hemostats for heat sinking. I'm going to get some of that excess solder off right now. So when it goes back in place, it'll be pretty easy to do. Lift this up and get a lot of the old solder and now burned original and black paint off this stud. This is the B+ node connection going to other important places in the amp. So it's very nice to have that be a very good solder joint, which means it needs to be a very clean bit of metal before solder is applied. So let me kind of get some of this gunk off the metal. Very gently clean up some of the flux. Like I said, to do this kind of stuff, I'm waiting over quite a bit. I have no idea what the audio is going to be like on playback. Hope it's not too horrible. Mr. Horrible, Mr. Horrible. Phone call from Mr. All right, when I put those wires back, I'll have something nice and clean to put them on. And all that stuff will be gone. Well, you can't see. All that stuff will be gone. Let's do the same over here for this bias wire. Another very critical connection. This one should go a little bit easier. It was never really attached very well. Let's see how much of that you can see. It was just kind of those strands of wire. Normally I'd zoom in and give a close-up on that, but that's just been barely attached all these years. No real solder connection, just holding it in place. I can do better when we put it back together. You might like it better when it's back together. All right, well, I got some superheated black paint on my fingers. I'll go ahead and clean that off of the wire at least. This is a day to be filthy. I was doing yard work for most of the day before this. Yard work and porch work. So I've been pulling vines off of fences and weeding and pruning suckers off of our crepe myrtles and scraping old latex paint off of porch surfaces before I prime with some good oil-based enamel. I came in to take a shower, and my lovely wife was very sensibly running the dishwasher, which takes a while. So I came to do some work in here, and I was filthy. But as YouTube has not quite implemented smell-o-vision, we'll be okay. So we got 2 clean posts here for the bias and the B+. Now we'll go over here to these screen connections and do the same thing. Trying to get a sense for which wire's on top, the black or the yellow. I think the black. Well, they're both together, but they're both together in such a way that I can put them back together as well. So that came out pretty easily. That's more easy. That's an easier removal than I've encountered before on many of these. On many of these, you're just glad if you have any slack so you can expose some fresh wire there. And again, let's do this first so we can see where the boundaries of the old wire are. All right, so it goes from the other direction. Good. Minimal damage to the insulation. I can neaten that up when I put it back together. Where's the thing that was right in front of me? Here it is. Let's see if you're seeing what I'm seeing. Well, seems to be okay. I'll try to refocus it a bit in post. Not refocus it, but frame it a bit better for you in post. Just getting some of the excess off. We're cleaning. That's better. All right, is this magically the nut that I need? No, that's 1/4 inch. Let me get out the other nuts I have. 5mm. All right, we're in business, and I don't even need to use the full tool. I can just, they're loose enough. I can just turn these by hand. So no wrench necessary, just a socket. Including this one that's supposed to be ground. That's a good feeling, you know, for this to be a ground connection on this cap. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. So let me get one of these stainless bowls ready to put these in, because it is very, very easy to lose not just these little brass nuts, but the little black toothed washers. They're notorious for flying everywhere in a shop. It's an amazing color on those things. They're like a really dark brownish gray. So if you have any shadows, they go black. If you have a hardwood floor, as I do, they go brown. They just turn invisible. It's an amazing alloy they're made from. I think science really needs to look into it probably a lot of amazing uses for invisible metal. So I will very carefully put them in this nice reflective stainless steel bowl, and hopefully they won't magically disappear like socks in a dryer. Though I have suspected they have that ability as well in the past. All right, this one doesn't have that lock washer. Is this even connected to anything? I'll find out when I pull the board. In theory, that's a smoothing cap, but I don't know that it's ever been connected in this app. Sometimes I will pull the board up a little bit and then bring the washers to me. I just gotta be careful they don't fly away when I do that. That's an easier way to pick them up, certainly, but sometimes they'll go flying when you do that because the board will be under tension that you're not aware of. And so it comes up that last millimeter, boing, and then they go flying. And did I mention invisible? All right, let me turn this whole thing around and move the camera and pull the pots out and flip this up so we can all take a look underneath. Actually, I think I'm going to step outside and have a think first. So I'm going to pause the recording here and then we will resume. Someone had snipped this end of the cathode resistor here, as well as this end of the cathode bypass cap, and they were just held together by blobs of solder. That's just so stupid. Let's lift this up. Let's see what I can show you. It's a bit tricky with lighting and such. I guess that's about as good as you're going to get. The good news is the underneath of the board is not all chewed up. The pads aren't lifted, things aren't burned, things are imminently fixable. So I'm going to clean all this first because it's got lots of grunge on it, and the front panel of the amp where the pots attach is really filthy, and the pots are really filthy, as you saw from my finger earlier. And, I'm not sure how much of this I can show in real time. It's going to be a lot of stuff that's repetitive. What I'll do is I'll show you a little bit of it, and then I'm going to be doing it over and over and over again, but I'll just show you the principle here. So without burning any of these wires, let me tuck these up gently. Like this old lead here on the old cathode bypass cap. See, it's really hard to do this with the camera there. I'm going to heat this up from the bottom and push it down from the top. Hopefully only burn my finger a little bit in the process. It's got so much solder up top. Doesn't want to go. There it goes. I'm going to get that out without damaging that pad. And because it is hot, without burning that wire right there. It's really hard to do with the camera here. It's where my left elbow wants to go. So once all those are out, and you've seen me do this in other videos, I'll then take the desoldering braid and remove the old solder. And then it'll be time to put new components in place, and they'll go back in these holes, and these holes will be undamaged. Let me at least do these 4 real quick and remove the solder and then show you what I'm talking about. All right, here on the top side, you can see there's no flux. I got all the dirt off. Here beneath, all the solder is removed from those pads. The pads are still in very good shape, and all the flux is gone, everything's clean. So when new components go back in place, they'll go safely and securely. Here's the old Pyre cathode resistor. Sadly, cut at that end is no longer good. Original electrolytic cap, there's just no reason to cut this resistor, especially to make some kind of crazy mod. There are amps where you can mod, but the goal of a well-modded amp is that it still looks like it could be factory, and it's still structurally as solid as factory. Anyway, I won't go on. People just say all kinds of things about how mean I am, or how I talk too much, or that having basic standards for high voltage, valuable musical devices is some form of being arrogant. Anyway, before I close this video out, I'm going to give the back of this chassis panel a wipe with some isopropyl to show you how dirty it is. And remember, all the grounds in this area are being made from the pots to this metal, and it's really yucky. So probably take about 3 passes of cleaning to really get that good. But yeah, it does matter getting all that funk out. I guess the big lesson I learned trying to do this step-by-step, blow-by-blow long-form video for you, it's a lot easier for you guys to see what I'm doing in a Fender with eyelet boards, because I don't have to flip a board up and work underneath. And I'm sorry that I'm going to have to cut this one short here, but the camera is really exactly where I need my elbows to be to do a good job on this. So sometimes the work has to come well ahead of the video. I'm sure you can all understand and appreciate that. Still more dirt coming up. Well, I didn't want to leave you guys with a total cliffhanger. So all the non-original parts are out. Some of the stuff in the pots I've disconnected. Some wires have been moved around badly. You know, here's one of them. This amp had been converted badly to a one-wire mod cascaded gain kind of thing, with a lot more than one wire moved around and a lot of bad stuff. So it had this as the channel volume, and this is the not very well implemented master, and just a lot of nonsense happening. I'll talk to the owner and see if he wants me to put it back to how it used to be, or a better version of a cascaded gain kind of thing. Though there are a lot of JCM 800s in the world, and JCM 800 variants with cascaded gain. There aren't a lot of original super basses left. So my inclination would be to make this a super bass, or a super lead at least, and maybe give it a good master volume on the back, just to make this thing usable, because it's really freaking loud, or it will be again. I did pull this daily filter cap, and it's got a date code on it, all of them do, of September of 73, that SJ there. So this amp is at least from late 73 or possibly early 74. Nothing on the serial number helps with that. But, and I've not checked pot codes or anything, but typically that's a pretty good indication. Late 73, early 74, which matches with all the little cosmetic things and the switches and all that stuff. So I think we've got this dated pretty well at this point. And the amp's going to be good. I did save that mustard that I took out from right here, the Phillips mustard cap, and I will put it back once I'm sure what the owner wants to do. Like it's a 22 nanofarad, so if he wants this put back to super lead, it could go either of these places. If he wants to put back to super bass, it could go to either of these places. If he wants it going to super lead, it'll probably go here, and we'd play around with a 22 versus a 2.2 here, which are two values you do find in super leads of various eras. Anyway, then I'll talk to him to see if he wants me to hunt down mustards. You know, that's a lot of money to get good ones, or whether he wants me to just put in some good sounding caps that are going to be suitable, in which case my preference would be the WEMA MKT 1813s, but he may want me to do Sozos or Synergies or something. Whatever. I'm easy to please. I want this thing to work and not catch on fire anymore. Before we end, only 2 of the pads underneath the amp, underneath the board, were damaged by the previous work. There's a little bit of damage right here at this cathode connection. At this cathode connection where the 2.7K goes to this junction with the typically 680 nanofarad cap there, 0.68. That can be fixed by me bending the lead of that resistor over and running it along the trace to here, so it's reinforced with solder there. And a little bit of damage was done here where this bias limiting resistor goes from the post to the resistor, because they heated that up so much and so poorly. But I can run that lead underneath the board into the bottom of this turret and have a very secure connection. All the other traces are fine. So let me call the owner, see where we're at, but I'm much happier with this app now. Thanks for watching.